Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that honestly just defies imagination. We're looking at the astonishing rise and the brutal fall of history's absolute largest land empire. We're going to explore how just one man, born into literally the harshest circumstances imaginable, managed to completely rewire the trajectory of the world forever. So how exactly does an outcast conquer the world? Well, it all starts with a young boy named Temujin, born into severe poverty out on the unforgiving Central Asian steppes. His early life was marked by unimaginable hardship. After his father was murdered, his family was actually abandoned by their very own people. But you know what? Instead of letting that defeat him, Temujin used it. He forged an iron will, methodically uniting rival nomadic tribes, and transformed a fractured group of outcasts into an unstoppable force. Okay, let's dive into this first part. Universal ruler, the rise of Temujin. Despite every single challenge thrown his way as a kid, Temujin proved to be a brilliantly tactical leader. He didn't just rely on brute force either. He formed strategic alliances, he expertly navigated incredibly complex tribal politics, and he decisively crushed rival factions. By 1206, he had pulled off the impossible. He completely united the warring Mongol tribes. And it was in that very year he was granted the legendary title Genghis Khan, which literally translates to universal ruler. Alright, shifting gears to Section 2, the Mongol war machine and its military innovations. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the Mongol army wasn't just massive, it was entirely revolutionary. They essentially built their success on four key pillars: speed, surprise, strict discipline, and flawless coordination. By utilizing fast-moving cavalry, thousands of horsemen could strike with a lightning precision. They would just overwhelm enemies before they could even react. This ruthless efficiency is exactly what allowed them to systematically sweep through northern China, across Central Asia, and push deep into the Middle East. And this timeline brilliantly illustrates how this war machine absolutely didn't just grind to a halt when Genghis Khan died in 1227. No way. The empire's expansion was relentlessly continued by his fiercely ambitious sons and grandsons. They kept pushing the borders further and further outward, maintaining that incredible momentum for over a century, right up until the empire finally began to fracture in the late 1300s. Which brings us to Section 3, the greatest land empire, expanding the borders. This is where we see the empire reach its absolute zenith under the rule of his successors. It was actually Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, who managed to pull off what so many people deemed utterly impossible. He conquered all of China and established the Yuan dynasty. Under his command, the Mongol Empire didn't just grow, it practically exploded across the map. We're talking about a territory stretching all the way from the coast to the Pacific Ocean, right to the very doorstep of Eastern Europe. The sheer scale of this is, frankly, staggering. 24 million square kilometers of territory. That makes the Mongol Empire the largest contiguous land empire in all of human history. To really put that number into perspective for you, that is nearly 2.5 times the size of the United States today. And all of it was connected under one unified, unbroken landmass. Just incredible. Now, let's slow down a bit for Section 4, connecting East and West during the Silk Road era. You see, Mongol rule was really defined by this fascinating yet deeply brutal duality. On the one hand, they brought devastating destruction to absolutely any cities that dared to resist them. We're talking wiping out entire populations and centuries of infrastructure just gone. But if you submitted, well, the Mongols became your ultimate protectors. They fiercely guarded merchants traveling along the Silk Road, bringing this unprecedented level of safety to those routes, which allowed transcontinental trade to just absolutely flourish. And this matters because that heavily protected trade network ushered in a true golden age of exchange. For the very first time, essential technologies and goods were flowing freely and safely between Asia and Europe. We are talking about the rapid spread of world-changing innovations, things like paper and gunpowder, right alongside new philosophies and incredibly diverse cultures across Eurasia. The Mongols, in a way, essentially forced a massive leap forward in global connectivity. But, as with all great superpowers, we arrive at Section 5, the fall of the Mongols, and how the empire collapses. This collapse certainly didn't happen overnight. It was much more of a multi-stage unraveling. First off, the empire simply became way too vast to govern effectively from a single central location. I mean, it was inevitable. That immense size caused it to fracture into several independent khanates, each ruled by descendants who, of course, had competing interests. And finally, these divided khanates were fatally weakened by internal political struggles and fierce local resistance. So by the late 1300s, the sheer weight of it all just caused the empire to break apart entirely. Which leads us to our final part, Section 6, their enduring global legacy and how they shaped the modern world. Even though the empire fell centuries ago, the Mongols physically and permanently reshaped the world we live in today. They connected the East and West in ways that had never been seen before. They literally redrew global borders, they completely revolutionized military strategy, and they spread vital knowledge across entire continents. They accelerated global communication and trade in a way that still fascinates historians today. It fundamentally altered the trajectory of human civilization. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. How different would our world map look today without the Mongols? Seriously, if that golden age of exchange hadn't been forced open by Genghis Khan and his descendants, where would our technology, or even our borders, be right now? The sheer scale of Genghis Khan's legacy is absolutely astounding when you really step back and look at it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer and for exploring this incredible chapter of history with us. Catch you next time.